ahead and get started. I have to wait for them to give me the green light. We are going to call this workshop of the Martin County School Board to order. If you will all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Ms. Falls, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Pritchett?
Yes.
Mrs. Russell?
Here. Please let the record show that Mr. DiTerlizzi and Ms. Powers were unable to be here today. Thank you. At this time, we will have open to the public. We do not have any comment cards at this time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak? Seeing none, that concludes public comment. We will be moving on to our discussion items. Our first item is our legislative priorities for this year. I would like to share a list of suggestions I received for consideration from Superintendent Main and our district staff. The first one we have is to provide 100% full day funding allocations for pre-kindergarten staff salaries to ensure every family can access a free, public, high-quality, full-time program. Allow school districts to reemploy personnel after 1 month of retirement without penalty to the employee's pension to address labor shortage issues. Next one is provide incentives or funding to facilitate the development of workforce housing specifically for public school personnel. Revise legislation to restrict minors' access to purchase vape pens and vaping materials, both online and in stores, by reinstating home rule and the authority given to local government agencies. Next one is support additional flexible funding to offer all students an extended school day and the year beyond the 180 days. Expand funding for the supplemental instructional academic allocation to pay for additional learning time for students through increased access to summer, before school, and after school learning opportunities. District staff's legislative suggestions. First one is innovative and sustainable education model, providing the same spending flexibility as other recipients of FEFP funding to foster the flexibility and autonomy for districts to compete with other school options. Example, attached, let's see, hold on. We do have, let me see here. We'll just move on to the next one. Safe schools, sufficiently funding districts' law enforcement, security-related staffing needs, as well as campus hardening and background check maintenance requirements. 3, recruiting and retaining high-performing teachers and staff, reducing burdensome certification and endorsement requirements placed on new teachers, incentivizing path to educator status for career changers who are content area experts, and financially recognizing all of Florida's high-performing teachers. And then my legislative priorities are I've got my top 3, which is fully fund VPK for all students, continue to expand CTE programs and funding, and then full funding to reduce the minimum distance required for elementary students to be provided transportation. I believe this will help with absenteeism, as transportation seems to be a barrier so often, especially with our Title I schools. Superintendent Main, did you have any additional info this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair, I did have an opportunity to meet one-on-one with Board Member Powers, and I wanted to make sure that the other board members were aware she does have 2 priorities that she would like on the record as we consider where we would like to go as a board. The first is to continue the pathways to graduation through CTE programming for students who cannot pass the ELA portion of the state test with appropriate concordance score, and that is something that as a board you all adopted last year. She would like to continue moving that forward if possible. I did do some research over the last couple of days and provided 3 links that I can forward separately to you all that provide some additional legislation both in Colorado as well as in one other state, Indiana, that have gone in that direction that we can work with Greg Black on if that is something that you all should choose. And then the other would be for the state to offer an exception through a waiver for school districts to provide wraparound services For students ages 4 and below, meaning the waiver from the state would allow school districts to be exempt from all the state licensing requirements needed to run daycare services, and this would be for students particularly ages 3 and 4. We would not get into 0 to 2 infant, but ages 3 and 4, and that would be in alignment potentially with what we would want to do within the 5-year strategic plan for the Stewart Learning Center for that early learning area for some possible funding.
Thank you. Mrs. Roberts, do you have further suggestions?
So I have a few comments. So in bringing up the thing about the Stewart Learning Center, when can we expect to see what that is going to look at? I know that we have 1.8 million from last year. We have another 200,000 from this year, and that the board is designated, and that's been on the capital plan for Early Learning Center. I know I've talked to you about it. I don't know if the rest of the board is aware of that, but I think that needs to move forward. And I don't see Mark here, but I mean, I think that's something that we need to probably get onto, because if we're going to try to open that up, otherwise we're going to miss the next fall when it comes. I mean, fall will be here before we know it, so anything that needs to be done to that space, I think, needs to be done in a rather short order, rather than waiting until spring and then not being able to get there, and etc. So I didn't know.
Dr. Miller and I have had some conversations. They have some previous plans that we can pull out, and staff can get moving forward on that as far as that's concerned. So
okay. Okay. As far as these priorities that we're seeing here, so I want to talk specifically to let me go through the district staff legislative suggestions, and maybe there's staff here that can speak to some of these. The innovative and sustainable education model. I'm not interested in poking the charter school bear. I'm not interested in being in a position where we're a district that's saying that public schools need to be treated the same as charter schools, and trying to make that distinction. I think we've gained some mileage in Tallahassee by not being that district, by being welcoming, opening, and accepting of our charter schools and understanding that. And I believe that it's my belief that other school board members and other people from around the state that have tried to make that distinction of charters are bad, it's not the same rules, it's not the same game, they're taking our money, that type of thing, doesn't get much mileage, we are a full choice state. So I don't know where, I'm particularly concerned with that example that's sitting there. So I don't know who in staff brought that forward, but I don't know what the rest of you think about that, but
No.
unless there's somebody in staff that wants to speak to it. Amy?
Just generally speaking, I agree with you. We're a full choice state, and until we're told otherwise, I think we need to align ourselves to that way of thinking. What we can do is make our schools more attractive by offering some of the things that these charter schools offer, so people won't make that distinction and they'll just come to us. That's the path that I think we should be on, not trying to fight with the charter schools. Just be competitive.
Yeah. And it doesn't really irritate me that their rules are different than ours, because if their rules are different than ours, then our standpoint is, if our rules are more stringent, then we have a higher quality product. So I think that's a distinction that maybe our public information people or whoever should be latching onto and pushing out, that, those distinctions make us a higher quality product and make us stand to a higher level, instead of trying to say, no, we all want to be at the same low level, or we want them to be at our high level. It's like, no, if you have an advantage of doing that, I kind of feel like that's the stand we should be taking with that, instead of going down that road. The second one, the Safe Schools, sufficiently funding, that sounds very reminiscent of what FSBA often comes up with, sufficiently funding. I look at that as a double-edged sword. On one hand, are we telling people that we don't have sufficient funding for law enforcement, security-related staffing, campus hardening, and background checks? Are we trying? So are we creating that message that we don't have enough funding? Or that's a mixed bag of, I don't know where I really want to go with that. Do I really want to tell people my legislative priority is I want sufficient funding so I can safely harden my schools? And the immediate question that somebody's going to ask me is, well, what can you not do that you need money to do?
Right. To answer your question about where these district staff recommendations came from, I did not see these ahead of time. I did when they were submitted to the board chair, but I would have to ask the specific district staff members that placed those on that email that was sent to the board chair. What I can tell you is that the Safe Schools is something that the superintendents will continue to ask for, because we believe that we are not adequately funded for all the new safety rules and regulations that we're being asked to address as a district and districts throughout the state of Florida. So that will continue to be an ask through superintendents and our lobbyists through FADS. So I can completely understand that we would not go in that direction as an individual board.
Yeah,
And that
so
we
which
would
I
fight
can
that
understand
fight.
that. I
Yeah.
think if FADS wants to pick that up on behalf of all the districts, I think that's one thing, but I think a public face to talking to a taxpayer, homeowner, etc., that's when we publish that and we say that this is our initiatives, I think it's, I don't know what you guys, I mean, I just think that's kind of I do agree with the recruiting and retaining high-performing teachers and staff, reducing the certifications, endorsement requirements, those type of things. I know that that alternative endorsement path, etc. I think we need to be prepared if we pick that up as a priority, which I don't mind doing, is to be able to articulate what exactly we're looking for. Are we looking for an extension of the alternative certification process? Are we looking for, so we need to be able to answer that question instead of just, help us do this. I think we need to, and maybe Mr. Raymond could say something. Please.
Say something. Good evening or good afternoon. I would just need more clarification too, as the one who would have to deliver as well. I think if we're asking the board for the support, I'm not exactly clear on the request. I'm very clear on the rules of certification and anything within our power to expedite reviews. We do that currently. So I would just need a little more information as to what exactly we're looking for from an alternate route approval. We have Lana seated to the right of me, where we offer CTE district certification option, honoring years of career experience to become a teacher. So that is one way we are creating an alternate path. Aside from that, I would just need more information.
So that came from a district staff suggestion.
Yes, I would need to
And I don't
find
know,
out who made that suggestion.
I'm not sure, Mr. Maine, where that came from, but
Yes, to answer your question, I believe I'm feeling your frustration. These district staff legislative suggestions were submitted to the board chair by the chief of staff. So I would need to defer to the chief of staff to ask where specifically those came from and which staff members, ma'am.
So that particular suggestion, as the superintendent shared for the previous one, was one that was an overarching goal of the district superintendents, the FADS organization. That one spoke about pathways, particularly for career changers and content area experts, to have more expedited pathways to being able to be placed in classrooms, and also recognition for teachers that are financially compensated, that are on the middle and higher end of their careers, rather than just what the governor is typically placing for those on the lower end. I don't have the sheet in front of me, and it's not on board docs, so I can't read word for word what it says, but that's...
thank you. Then, and I don't mind something, because I do think that would have some assistance, but I would like perhaps Mr. Raymond, if he could drill down a little bit harder on that to see exactly what it is that we're looking for. So for example, if you're looking for a longer term to complete your alternative certification, changing the number of years and extending that so that somebody doesn't come in, stay the minimum number of years, and then leave because they don't want to be certified, but they are somebody that we would want to keep, if that's one of the things that you're looking at, etc. But I mean, I think that when we give language, and whether it's through Greg Black or whether it's through us talking to legislators, when we give language and we don't have a clear path of what it is we're asking for, we're asking for a category that has doesn't get anywhere, doesn't get any, but I don't have any problem with that one. Okay, so
Yep.
as far as the other Superintendent Main's suggestions, I do agree that Marcia's two, first of all, should continue on. I mean, I think those are things that we really do need to do. I do agree with that full funding allocation for the pre-kindergarten staff salaries. I don't think, and this is probably something that Superintendent Main, that I think needs a little bit more exploring before we adopt it as a legislative priority. The requirement about reemploying after a month of retirement instead of the 1 year of retirement, I think has huge FRS implications. I know that several years ago when FSBA was looking at it, it was the state pushed back mainly from an FRS standpoint as to what does that do for FRS, knowing that they're very sensitive about double dipping, about the rules for drop, about all these other things. And I don't want to get into asking for something that we don't understand what it is we're asking for. And then we're asking for it, we find out that this is like a complete non-starter because it requires way too many other departments to do. I do agree with the incentive and funding to facilitate the development of workforce housing. And I do agree with the vape pens and vaping materials piece. And the same way that I'm questioning the one with the FRS piece, I'm questioning the additional flexible funding. And I'm thinking perhaps that needs to be, because we know that the requirement to get full FTE funding has to do with the number of hours, etc. I think that has to be spelled out a little bit clearer so you know exactly what it's almost like if I'm asking for a categorical to address that, or how I'm looking at doing that instead of just saying, give me more money, because then their way of giving more money is just we've increased the base student allocation by $150, there's your more money. And it doesn't go anywhere. So, and then Jennifer, the fully funding the VPK I think is good. The continue to expand CET programs and funding. In theory, I agree with that, but I think we need to it's the same thing that I'm saying to him, is that I think we need to figure out how we're asking for that. Mm-hmm. Because I think otherwise it's just you want more base student allocation, here's more base student allocation. You want more, like what is it exactly and how do we get from point A to point B? And I think then the question is going to be, well, what have you done with the funding that you've had in the past? What does that look like, and what particularly are you looking to expand? And I almost feel like, based on past conversations with Greg Black, we're almost in a position where, let's say it was marine technology, or let's say it was aerospace, or let's say it was something else, that we're in a position where we should maybe be asking for a line item for a special academy or doing something else. So instead of trying just to solve the whole state's problem, I would be more interested in a Martin County solution for what we're looking for to take care of our issues. You know what I mean? Because I think that's, because when you expand it to the whole state, then it becomes a huge costly item. Whereas if you're just limiting it to the, look, we're special, and we've done this, so therefore we deserve this, I think we're in a much better position to actually get some action. Because we really haven't asked for a whole lot of anything in the years. We've just been the nice, quiet, people that have been friendly and slapping you. As far as the transportation piece, and that's another piece that I think that when you look at changing the 2 mile limit, and when we look at that, that's a huge cost for the state, which is why I think it gets kicked away every time. But I think maybe if we look at our absentee rates for Title I and say it's Title I, like if we compare Title I to regular school, to non-title, and say that this is where we see a problem. So if we can start a reduction and see if it helps. So even if you did a reduction, instead of it being 2 miles, if we could get, and even if we asked to be a pilot program where we'll reduce the Title I busing to 1.5 miles and see whether that improves attendance, I think that something like that we might be able to get some mileage with.
Okay.
So that's my thoughts.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great. Ms. Pritchett?
transportation. Kind of a non-starter for them. It's somewhat of a non-starter for FSBA at this time. However, I think if we asked for K through 6 and employed the Title I piece, we'd have a better shot. We'd narrow it down. Mine was everyone who, full funding, like what I forgot what it's called. It's called universal busing. That's what I was looking for. But I could live with K through 6, Title I. I think that would.
Now, what do you think about asking for a pilot program in
Well,
Martin?
a pilot program would be a great way to start, and I have a feeling that we'd have good success. I just do. In talking to people, there are 2 people working. They can't get there. If the bus could pick up their kids, they'd be in school more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always CTE. I'm very much a proponent of the CTE programs. Continuing and growing as we're able to. And then I didn't think of this, but I really like the vape pen legislation. I really like that. So I think restricting minors' access is a good idea if we can do it. That's what I have.
Thank you.
Well,
I feel like it would be in the board's best interest to choose our top 3 priorities that we can go after, and then maybe there's others that we can piggyback on. Someone else in other districts going after something, but like, what would be our top 3? I mean, are you?
well, we all agreed on
Mm-hmm.
funding, right?
Yes.
We all agreed on.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. And then the concordance scores.
Yes.
We need to continue with that.
Yes.
And then, I feel like, and Superintendent Maine, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but is it possible that we kind of included the wraparound services in our ask with the VPK? So it would be 100% full day funding with wraparound services. So that way we kind of had this 2 asks as one.
Yes, I think we could work with Greg Black on coming up with language that would encompass both in a way that we can kind of tackle both at the same time. Because essentially what we're wanting to do is expand those wraparound services, get them in early as a 3 and 4 year old, roll them into our VPK programming, and then right into our kindergarten, with us controlling that so we know exactly what those students are learning, what they're exposed to, and I believe we could provide it better as an educational institution versus some of the. It's not a knock on some of our outside providers, but I just think that's what we do. That's what we're in the business of doing, and so if we can provide that before and after, and we could pull that off. I think.
And that
Just
would
gonna
just
be
be
how we
one
word it.
ask instead of 2. And then everyone seems to be on board for the vaping ask. So if we made that our 3rd one, and then see what we could get with, talk to Greg and see what we could do about possibly a pilot program for the K through 6 Title I busing. Is everyone okay with those?
Yeah, and I'd like I would like Mr. Raymond to look though and see, because if there is a simple fix of changing that alternative certification by just changing the number of years.
Mhm.
I mean, if there's something that's that, so when they come up with their education train bill, if it just becomes an add-on piece of just change this to this. I mean, just change a 5-year to a 7-year. Just change it,
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's not too far off, and I think it's something that we have. And I defer to Mr. Raymond, but I mean, I think so. That's just an example. But for instance, if we had examples of people that we lost, good teachers that we lost because they weren't interested in getting fully certified, but they were qualified field professionals, etc., that we would have value for in our school district. So if we could just have had them 2 more years, if we just could have had them a little bit longer, or whatever that piece looks like, I think there's some value to that.
And I think it's the timing too of some of these certification requirements. When you're a new 0-year, first-year teacher, the state is requiring that you have certain endorsements by said period of time, right? And so Mr. Raymond working in conjunction to Heather Platt on that side of the house with professional learning, because they work together closely on what are those requirements and can we spread those requirements out by an ask of the state to say, hey, instead of 2 years, let's give them 3 years, or let's give them 4 with the data that you have asked. It may or may not support, I'm not sure, but I know between reading endorsement, ESOL requirements, whether you're a PEC teacher or a non-PEC teacher, there's all different types of tight deadline requirements, and I think it could give us some breathing room and allow for some of these teachers to have some additional time. And that's where I think we could.
And maybe the answer is, okay, well, if you want to prioritize the reading endorsement, you know, that if you reach the reading endorsement by a certain day, if you quickly fast track the reading endorsement, that then you're given grace on other endorsements that you need with an extended schedule, because you can only do so much at one time. But we have found that, and we support the reading endorsement and understand the importance of that. So if we support that piece of it, here's our data that's showing that this would be something that would be of true benefit for us. And so that might not end up being added until they look and see exactly what that looks like. And if it doesn't work out, then of course it wouldn't be. But I think that would be.
No, that's fine. All right. Well, I feel like we have direction. Thank you. We will continue on, and we will have a presentation on naming rights. Ms. DeShazo, would you like to come forward?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Main. Joining me this evening is Mr. Brian Sikowski. We're here to do a presentation for you that kind of touches on a conversation that's been ongoing throughout the district over the last couple of years, really, about reduction in funding and different ways that we can get creative and come up with ideas to kind of supplement what we may be losing through FTE. So Brian represents Tebow Partnerships. They are an organization that specializes in non-traditional revenue generating strategies for school districts. And he's going to provide a presentation on how our district could potentially maximize financial resources by implementing a facility naming rights program. And this would help us explore opportunities for corporate and community engagement in naming district buildings, athletic complexes, and other facilities to enhance our revenue streams. So I will turn it over to Brian.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the time. My name is Brian Stowski, and we've been doing this since 2014. We've worked with school districts across Florida and across the U.S. We worked all the way out to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Memphis, and then Lee County, Palm Beach, Orange County, and across Florida. So our programs really emphasize finding those non-traditional revenues that can be reoccurring and help, in several ways across the school district. But the one focus that we were talking about today is naming rights. Our group also works in digital advertising and then league style sports sponsorship. So every school has their sports teams. They go out and find their sponsors. We do a league base where we would sell all the high schools as one group, and it adds another layer to the sponsorships. It also adds another opportunity for larger companies that might need a bigger market reach that wouldn't normally sponsor a single school. So there's some areas, but normally what we start off with is we come in and we do an audit. We look over the programs that are currently there. We identify the strengths and weaknesses that we see from our view on the outside, and then we try to make recommendations on maybe how to work those programs to be more efficiently, and that could be in the digital or the athletic space. But for the naming rights, we also go out and we do the valuations up front, and that's very important to have a solid valuation. That gives the validity to the partners. It lets them understand that this is a serious program. We're not looking for donations. It's not a philanthropic based program. Most of the partners that come to the table are leadership from companies that can be either their marketing teams or ad agencies. and they're coming in here to do two things. There's a big trend right now from larger companies. They want to do more cause-based. They want to do more community. They want their funds that traditionally have went to billboards, television, radio, to be used, and at the same time still get their reach and engagement that they're looking to do within the community. So we found this to be effective. We've had success with it, and we've brought in some great revenues to school districts over that. I talked about us already. I think here's an important stat I just want to share is that brand managers and advertising agencies know the value of brand loyalty. 75% of parents want brands to support schools, and 64% of parents will switch to brands to do so. And brands know this. We're actually, every year we go to Advertising Week. That's actually next week in New York City. And I did put a little business card on your desk right now. A current project we have that we're taking there next week is Bethune-Cookman University is a current client of ours. And on that, we do a QR code just on a business card to hand out and talk to them. The really quick conversations normally in these environments. But we want to go out and we want to spread the story of Martin County and why it's important for these businesses that maybe are on a national level to come in here and support locally, and also the partners that are out in this local community to give them a tangible way. Sometimes we hear, hey, we want to be a part of this, we want to work with school districts, we don't know how, right? So we try to help them, walk them to the table, and show them how these can be valuable marketing strategies for their company. So there's some partners I mentioned at the beginning that we've worked with over the years. Here's some examples. I just want to kind of give a quick overview. These are actually all real examples that we've worked with. The left side there, you'll see Flores Blood Centers. This is outdated. They're no longer here, but in Bright House Sports. But those are examples of areas that normally when you do a league-style sports sponsorship, those are areas that the single schools aren't doing. They're not selling these sponsorships. They're not selling halftime shows. They're not selling PA packages. These are things that we've gone on, and we kind of support what's already happening. And we, it's not something where, and this is very important that you'll see a lot of, is you don't want to just move revenue or support from the left hand to the right hand, right, and then call it new revenue. So we work directly with the schools on the school level to make sure that we're not stepping on anything currently already in place. But at the top, this is another one. This is actually Duval County Schools. They had an anti-bullying hotline, so we reached out to the partners that made sense. Because revenue is great and revenue is helpful for the district to help fund programs like this. This was a hotline that they were getting ready to shut down. And so we went out, because what a great story that is, right? Hey, go to Sprint, go to T-Mobile, go to AT&T and say, hey, there's an opportunity here. They didn't know about it. We talked about the value. They moved some money in the market and supported that program. SeaWorld's another one. The school district this was still using the 1980s pixel art for their school menus. We said, hey, why don't you provide some graphic designs? You can also promote your new educational program there, and they also provide funding. There's still funding on all these, but we also try to be smart, right? If there's other resources that make sense, if there's opportunities, NASA, Kennedy Space Center, we've done huge district-wide STEM programs with them to provide funding, and these things can go to areas in I don't want to recommend where to put them, but an example in the past is non-discretionary funding has gone to help maybe fund lunches for teachers coming back to school in areas where maybe there's not that current funding available to do these types of events. So these are just some examples of partners that we've worked with in the past. Here's some school district stadiums across the state here. Baptiste Orthodontics out of Orlando, Nemours Stadium in Lake Nona, Lee Health in Bonita Springs, and North Law Firm in Dunbar High School in Lee County. So these are just several examples of what they look like. People assume sometimes that you have to have a iconic team on the field, or you have to have a state-of-the-art stadium, or you have to be on a major highway. Although those things help, that's not always the motivating factor for a lot of these partnerships coming in. And what we really like to see and what we really enjoy is, on top of the revenue that can help the school district, is really aligning your brand, right? Because it's an important brand to have, with the partners that make sense, bringing people to the table that help with that brand equity for the school district. And a lot of times what we actually see on top of this, for example, Nemours Stadium in Lake Nona, from that, they built out a CTE program for nursing for the students. They've worked a program where the band comes in and helps the sick. They do visits now to the hospital, and it's really changed the partnership. It's not just a transactionary relationship. It's a full relationship with these brands. So there's other values that I like to point out as well. But our keys to success are, like I mentioned, is just creating. You got to start with accurate valuations. You have to be able to show them that you're knowledgeable and you understand the market and you understand their advertising marketing options and make this a viable one. Again, because in the past, a lot of brands are only used to working with school districts on a donation basis, or hey, here's a banner in the outfield, which are all still great and wonderful ways to support the district, but maybe doesn't come from the same pocket of money, right? They might come from their community engagement money, or their outreach, they want to support school. But now if you can really say, hey, this is a viable option in our market now, you actually open up a whole new pocket of revenue that they want to spend. And so to do that, the accurate valuations are very important. Building our reputation with marketers and advertisers that we've built up over the last 10 years is very valuable to us, because now we have the trust built up. We don't have to start from scratch, but we have that relationship with those buyers and the opportunities out there. And then to make sure that we're identifying those partnerships that make sense. And then the other important part of this is to make sure that the deliverables that we promise are delivered on, because we have a very high renewal rate of stadiums, and that's important to us. And it also shows that our valuations are strong and the relationships are good, and that we're following through on what we promise. So we're big on transparency and accuracy in our reporting, and then also in these partnerships is being very detail oriented up front, making sure they understand, right? Like if you support this, if you engage in this partnership with the stadium naming rights, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get other pieces that you may want throughout the district. Everything is itemized and put out so people understand exactly up front what they're getting, and at the end they can look back and say, hey, that's what we were promised, that's what we received. Just talking about the market valuations, the go-to-market sales kit, something that we put together. Again, there's a small digitalized one for Bethune-Cookman on that business card, but we also put print versions and digital versions. I can also provide some extra examples after this meeting as well if you'd like to see some. But those are very important to have, to be able to put out, because you want to, when you get someone's attention, you want to make it look as professional as possible and clear to understand. So. So really, that's a quick overview of what we do. Again, we're also really big on making sure that if I reach out to somebody and this isn't a good fit, especially like naming rights, right? Like it doesn't have to be a stadium. It can be a gym. It can be the arts, right? The theaters out there. All good opportunities for partnerships depending on who you're talking to and how they want to get involved. But just making sure that, you know, that we are helping out as a true partner, not a vendor. And understanding we have a vendor, but that we act as a partner, that we look out in the best interest of the school district. So if I don't have somebody and I call and I say, hey, there's a stadium naming rights opportunity available, and they're like, oh, that doesn't meet our budget, I don't just say, okay, thanks, and hang up. I say, hey, well, maybe you should reach out to the middle school. They have a fundraising arm, or the foundation, or the school sports team. If you don't want to do the whole district, I don't want you to just walk away. Let me help you out. Let me get you on the phone with the right person, and we'll pass them along. So that's all I have today. But if there's any questions, I enjoy talking about this stuff, obviously. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Roberts?
Thank you. So I've been doing some research before you got here, and I think this is a really great opportunity to kind of move into a more professional level than what the grassroots type of, just call it sports fundraising. Let's just look at that for a piece. The grassroots effort that we have. I mean, I think right now, and correct me if any of these things are incorrect, that there would be hard asset standards. So for example, if I'm going to name a ticket booth, if I'm gonna be ABC, whatever it is, right? Ticket booth, that it's very clear standards as to what that needs to be. So I know what that's gonna look like. There's a set time frame that that's gonna be for, et cetera, so that I don't have somebody who thinks they're gonna come out with a can of spray paint and spray paint a stencil on the thing and go the cheap way. I kind of know what that is. Is that
Yes, that's
correct? That's a correct. I also think there's that what we suffer from now is a school-to-school consistency, where I think that a lot of these things, and I look to Dr. Miller, that, you know, you show up out at a school and you find out that somehow or other the scoreboard is now being sponsored by some company, and nobody even knew about it. I mean, and it's kind of like it just happened, and what they were paying, there is no consistency from school to school as to who's paying how much and what that value is, which creates another issue of creating a level playing field of opportunity. So for example, if your company wanted to do it, that you would have done it for $500 more if you had known about it. But you didn't know about it because I got there first because I knew so-and-so, and therefore I was able to get my name on something and do that. So I do think that there's some, I had a question about, is there a bid process, or how would you, so how do you make sure that if you're reaching out to Sprint or Nextel or something at the same time, how do you make sure that a local firm has the ability to compete at for the same opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's actually two different ways to go about it. One is on the front end, when we do the valuation, we do identify the areas of signage that we would like. We normally walk out with the facilities group and we handle that. But when we're putting them up, when we finally have that valuation done and we have the promotional sheets and we're getting ready to go to market with this, that's exactly right. Like, you don't want to overlook someone, especially someone that's been a good partner of the district, and then accidentally don't reach out to them and miss them. So the two ways to go about it is, one is to get that final amount and then start calling. And what we normally do is go by category. So if I'm calling healthcare, I'm calling every healthcare partner in this market here. We'll call some national brands that we know. Then we'll go to telecom, which normally is going to be national brands. But then there's other areas, right? There's banking is another strong partner in these types of industries. And you can have local credit unions. You can have credit unions that work with the school district already. And to make sure that each one of them have it. And what we do is we log it and we report every month who we've talked to. And when something's sold, we let you know who it was spoken with. And we don't go off script and negotiate because of the dangers that come with that. So I can't offer Disney a package for $60,000, and then because Universal gave my family some tickets or something, you know what I mean, and then give them $45,000. That can be that's an amateur thing that I've seen done. We understand that you're consistent, you're going out and you're reaching as many people as possible. That's the first route. The second route is something new that I'd like to propose. I'd love to see is a bid style. There's bid software that's already modeled out in philanthropic areas, if you've ever worked in those, where they do silent bids or whatever. But put it out, and you can get some earned media in the market sometimes from that, and then put it out to bid and just put an end date on it, October 30th, whatever's the highest bid is at that time. But then just work the rest of the month to make sure, again, that we're accountable and that we've done our work. And that's why I think, like you mentioned, saying you want to professionalize these opportunities and this for the school district, and I think that's important. But that's another way to do it. It's not common. I think it's actually probably a smart way because of two reasons. One is I think it drives up your valuation higher. It can, if you get people that are bidding on it, you can go up higher. And then also too is because of the media and the way we pass information on with social media, you get a lot of bang for your buck with that style.
And I had a couple other questions.
Sure.
So how do you handle, which is something that I don't think we handle very well, how do you handle firms that want to advertise with us, but on the other hand, they're suing us? Is there a...
So obviously, any partner that we bring to the table, you would want to have the conversations to make sure that with the leadership and the board that they're a good partner. We have worked with the Joe North Stadium in Lee County, actually. I think that was an actual situation at the time. And, it's up to the district, but if for me, a lot of times it's not a personal thing or somebody wants to give back. He actually went to that high school and wanted to partner up. At the same time, he has clients that
Sure,
time
but
to time,
so we have some personal injury attorneys that if you've been hurt or injured in an accident, call 1-800 something or other. And I think the last thing you would want to see is a stadium with a sign that it's sponsored by that personal injury attorney. And by the way, if you've been hurt or injured in an accident and you fall down the stairs here, call this number. It's like,
right.
what are we doing, right?
Yeah, that's good to be out in front of that, right? What are the policies, what are our intentions, who's going out there and proactively reaching out to these partners? Again, trying to find the best partners for the district. And a lot of that's in policy up front. You want to make sure that you have coverage areas. And then normally the coverage at the end of that is it'll be voted on in the best interest of the district to make sure that they're good
All
partners.
right, thank you very much. That's
Yeah.
all I had.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Just very. So my mind is racing because one of the things that our schools do on a regular basis at the school level is fundraising for their school with local businesses. If you go to Blaze Pizza, if you go to Cafe Martier, whatever it is, you will get a percentage off of your meal, and that will go to. Is there any benefit in going to those places for a bigger piece of the pie?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a lot of times, early on when we started this, there was some pushback sometimes where somebody at the school or district level already had some people, they do the same thing every year, right? They do the coupon book.
Right.
And they're like, don't touch these, right? These are partners that we have. But what we really found is, one is it's normally not like, oh, I'm going here and I'm leaving this. Normally it's just an add-on. A lot of times it's a different budget there, but we've actually found that they get more upset if they work with you already and they're like, hey, I do this program every year. You have a new program and you didn't tell me about it. So what we try to do, though, is be mindful of other people's effort and making sure that we're not, again, you don't want to just move money from the right to the left hand and call it new. So is to try to build on them. And that's something I think we're really good at and we've done. And we get a lot of great responses from clients on that is we try to do packaging. If you decide to do digital and allow a couple web ads on your homepage, and naming rights and sports, we'll go out and we're pitching the whole package to them. We'd like them to be in different areas and continue to add on and continue to do the coupon book as well.
Because Chick-fil-A comes to mind. I mean, they are a brand. They are here, and they are always sponsoring our schools for this week or whatever it is. I think the high school, South Fork High School, works with them. So those are things that just kind of come to my mind as opportunities that we should try to match if we can.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it also, there's other tertiary benefits as well where, we're calling and we're being proactive and we're reporting back to you. We can catch maybe partnerships that went south somewhere, right? Went sour somehow, and then talk them back to the table and identify their problems, whatever issue that was that had them decide that they didn't want to partner with the district anymore, because we're proactively going out there and calling us. And I think that can be helpful as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to make sure that locals had the opportunity first. Martin County is a small county. Everybody's like a family, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of first before we go to larger outside entities.
Yeah.
That would be my only concern.
Definitely, yeah, and that can be a priority, so we can make sure that our list that we hand and show, because all the prospect listing we're sharing in advance, and then we're showing the responses that we got from the partners out there. We can put a focus on that.
Okay, thank you. So this is something that you would like additional information on and you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm interested in moving forward. I mean, I think it's something, I do have a question, Chair Russell. When you say you want to be sure that local businesses are given an opportunity first. So, so let's say it's a naming right for a ticket booth at Martin County High School, then you wouldn't be using a bidding process. You would be reaching out, you would be using evaluation and reaching out to the locals first? Or you would just be ensuring that they have access and they're notified of the bidding process?
Yes, and I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that they're aware
That
and they
they're
have the
aware.
opportunity.
Okay, they have the opportunity to
Yes,
participate,
because we
okay.
have so many that give to
Yeah.
us already, and I wouldn't want to say, oh, no,
Yeah,
we're not worried about you right now. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the larger companies. No, I want to make sure that they are included, they have all the information that they need. So,
yeah,
if it's $30,000 and they can't do that, that's fine, and, Sprint picks it up. But if they do, and they do have that money, and they do want to,
right. So just,
Tribute,
so
I
be
just
sure
wanna
that
make
they're
sure.
included in the
Yes,
process is that, yeah,
yes.
okay, I got that, thank you,
These
yes.
these are so questions are so good. Can I add one more thing? Because I
Sure,
just think it's
yes.
really important that I didn't really talk about. Is we do practice leveling with partners. So we may pitch out there a $50,000 a year stadium, but at the same time we're also offering them maybe a $15,000 sports package or several $100s, $500-$600 digital package. If you know what I mean. So that you're right. Certain partners are going to be priced out. It's just a fact. Certain people have certain budget numbers they just can't hit. So we try to let them know and try to be smart and intentional with who we're talking to and what we're presenting them. Because we really do. I think it's the best interest of the school district when you're using somebody to be proactive, is that they're also looking out for the best interests of your business partners in the community. So we try to do that on both ends, make sure that, because we want them to get the result, because then that's an easier renewal, and then if you're not spending time on renewals, you can constantly keep going after new business. So
right?
Thank
I
you.
also want to always support local, so the more they see their ads, we're going back, people are buying from them. So we want to make sure that we're partnering well with them. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we are moving on to our school board policies. Items number 4.08, 4.14, and 4.21 have been pulled from this afternoon's agenda. This will be coming back later at a date for review. Item number 4.01, policy number 0131, legislative policymaking. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Are there any questions, changes, or comments? Item number 4.02, policy number 0165, meetings. What is the board's preference on allowing virtual attendance at our meetings? Are you okay with that?
As long as we have a majority in the building, I'm
Yes.
okay.
We would have to have quorum. Roberts, you agree?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4.03, policy number 1010, superintendent relationship. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendation and the superintendent's recommendation to select the option? Okay. Are any questions or changes? Item number 4.04, policy number 1129.01, 3129.01, and 4129.01, tutoring. 4129.01 is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendation to select the option?
That's fine.
Thank you. Item number 4.05, policy number 1150, 3150, and 4150, resignation procedure. Is the board okay with accepting the staff's recommendations?
No.
Questions, changes? Would you like to comment?
Yeah,
Ms.
so for
Roberts?
all three of these, so let me start with 3150 and 4150, where you're putting a strike through where the employee goes straight to the Department of Human Resources and doesn't go through their supervisor or principal. I think it should go through the supervisor or principal, because I think that, if it's a matter of, I would not want to just have people resigning, which is the way it was before. I don't want them to just resign without going through somebody to be able to express it, because I don't think HR necessarily would know exactly what the situation is and exactly if anything can be rectified, et cetera. I think when it does to get to HR after that, that then HR can kind of work their magic to see whether, well, is it the school? Is it the, I mean, is it too long of a drive? That type of thing. But I mean, I think that we're hoping, the hope is that our employees are developing relationships with their supervisors or their principals. And in developing that relationship with the supervisor or principal, I think that that is the method that it should go. At the same time, which would mean unstriking the first line in 3150, unstriking the first line in 4150. I also believe that in 1150, which is administrative people, this has the administrative people going straight to the Department of Human Resources. I also think they should be going through their supervisor. I mean, I think that if we're trying to build a culture where people are accountable to their supervisor or to their principal, that you need to include the principal or the supervisor in that loop. You don't just have people going straight to an outside source. So I don't know, Mr. Maine, if you had any comment about that.
No, I agree with you. The only concern, that I would have based on Neola's recommendation to do that, and I think we should revert back to it going to the immediate supervisor first, to your point, would be in the event that an employee is resigning because of their immediate supervisor. So I'm okay, they just need an alternative person to go to. So at that point, maybe the language could say, it is, you go to your immediate supervisor, but if I'm resigning because of my immediate supervisor and I don't feel comfortable providing them the letter of recommendation or the letter of resignation, then I have the option to go to HR or a designee, another assistant principal or someone else, as long as I am notifying.
So if we could just add preferably, or preferably through and so then you have the ability to go straight to HR. Because I would imagine that if HR is talking to a disgruntled employee who doesn't like their principal, that instead of saying, well, you've got to submit it through your principal, it's like, well, it's preferable, but you can send it straight to me. So if we can change that language to that, does that work?
Yes, I like the flexibility in that.
I guess I'm asking the obvious question. If you're leaving, why do you care who you're telling? If you don't feel comfortable telling your principal that's why you're leaving, what's it going to matter? Is there,
So,
I don't mean to be,
No,
but if I'm leaving because I don't like my principal or my immediate supervisor, whatever that may be, why wouldn't you want to tell them?
So
I guess-
I believe if we're following proper labor protocol or creating a culture or an environment where we're giving that ability for that employee to feel safe and being able to communicate, just kind of follow me for a second. If I'm an employee, to your point, that is upset or disgruntled with my supervisor, therefore I'm quitting, but I have the avenue and mechanism to resign to to someone else or go right to HR. HR then, to Mrs. Roberts' point, could mediate and say, well, listen, don't leave the organization. If this is a supervisor issue, let us go through the proper protocols to investigate or to look into what is happening, and maybe it's a transfer to another site location or another department to which that employee would feel comfortable working, and we held on to the employee versus just an outright. There has to be a mechanism for an employee to feel like they could at least speak to someone that then would say, listen, okay, we have options. We can work this out with you. Or you just let the employee go altogether. I think we're trying to create a culture by which we could try to attempt to save that employee.
Right.
And move them somewhere else or do something else different with them if there is a personality conflict or some issue that has arose between the supervisor.
So maybe it means adding a paragraph in here of some type of mediation process where they could go directly to above who they're reporting to and be able to talk it out before resigning. Because that's the culture, that they don't feel they have to resign. They have another mechanism before that happens, if that makes sense.
True, but
A
I mean,
culture that we're trying to create is one where a person that feels that they have to resign, give them something that they can do before they resign.
Okay.
I don't mean to.
I understand what you're saying. I think it's our resignation procedure.
Okay,
that's
so
why
maybe
that
we
goes
need
back to that, it
So maybe
being-
we can develop something in our policy and procedure where a person, before they get to that resignation level, they do something else. They talk to someone or have someone that they can lean on before they make that ultimate decision.
I understand completely what you're saying.
I think,
Go ahead.
yeah, I think between sentence 1 and 2, you could craft language that says, you know, just that feel-good language of the we highly value hardworking and dedicated employees, you know, and if there's a method to, you know, something about salvaging the relationship without using the word salvage, you know, if there's some method, some addition, some different placement of where you could be, something else, et cetera, that we are interested in trying to maintain the relationship before a letter of resignation is done. You know, a letter of resignation should be submitted by the individual employee to the Department of Human Resources, preferably through his or her supervisor or principal. In the Martin County School District, we value our employees, our hardworking, dedicated employees, and believe that it is a value to work with them to find a position or location which they are comfortable and feel that they want to continue working with. To this end, a discussion either with the supervisor, principal, or the Human Resources Department can assist in this before a formal resignation is presented. And then go on to, the resignation shall be in the form of blah, 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 et cetera. Does that make sense?
It does, and there are times where employees just acting out of pure frustration and
Sure.
then regret submitting the letter of
Sure.
resignation. And obviously, nothing is set in stone until the board takes action on that resignation, so it can be rescinded up until that point. But I just want to make sure that we are clear in that. I could be totally wrong, I don't know. I'll look to my HR people that maybe that doesn't even need to be the case and we can go directly to the supervisor. There's something kind of triggering me to think that we need to give them an alternative option if they are having an issue with their direct supervisor.
And I think that is covered where it says to send it to Human Resources, and that is our normal process. Mr. Raymond and myself receive that, or a call, or talk with someone about going to resign, then we can go through what are the steps and what we might have open, that is a transfer window open, if it's a teacher, or if there's another position that someone may feel more comfortable in. A lot of times people leave jobs for supervisors, so I think the dialogue is absolutely correct. But knowing that we are already doing that in the background in HR, whenever we have the opportunity now, that's happening. There is also an administrative procedure that has come from Neola associated with this policy that our team is working with, and we did create a resignation form that will collect some more information than someone just emailing their boss, I'm resigning, effective blank. So we're utilizing that form as much as we can to gain more information from the resignation procedure as well. So if you'd like us to add some more language on there with regard to, you know, looking into the reason for leaving, we're happy to do that. I kind of thought just the one wording that Mrs. Roberts said, between the words HR and the first struck-through sentence, preferably through the supervisor, would then lend itself to they're going to go to HR, it's preferably through the supervisor, but there's an alternative method. The form now is in the district forms on their desktop. I mean, if they'd like to just fill it out and bring it to HR, send it to HR, they have that avenue as well at this time.
And recognizing also that this is, the way this policy is changing, the resignation is not for the approval of the school board. It now is the approval of the superintendent where it becomes final, and then we shall or must approve your recommendation, so.
Which does help significantly when we have employees that we do not want to wait for the next board
Sure.
meeting, and
Yeah.
it's to our benefit, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 4.06, policy number 1281, 3281, and 4281. Use of employees' personal property at school. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Thank you. Item number 4.07, policy number 2121, waiver/modification of rules, school improvement process. The recommendation is to rescind this policy. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Just a reminder, item number 4.08 was removed, so we'll be moving on to 4.09. Policy number 2440, summer programs. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and superintendent's recommendation to include selecting the fees option? Good. Item number 4.10, policy number 2455, dropout prevention and academic intervention programs. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations and the superintendent's recommendation as follows? Third paragraph, select or other method agreed to by the parent. Are there any questions, changes, or comments from the board? Item number 4.11, policy number 2460, exceptional student education. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Thank you. Item number 4.12, policy number 2520, selection and adoption of instructional materials. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 4.13, policy number 2521, instructional materials program. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Just a reminder, item 4.14 has also been removed. Item number 4.15, policy number 2700, academically high-performing school districts. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting this new policy? Item number 4.16, policy number 3120.03 and 4120.03, athletic coaches. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 4.17, policy number 3120.08 and 4120.08, part-time extracurricular personnel. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 4.18, policy number 4128, contracts for confidential positions. This is a new policy. Is the board okay with accepting the new policy? Item number 4.19, policy number 5130, withdrawal from school. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 4.20, policy number 5330.01, self-administered medication and epinephrine. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Very good. Just a reminder, item number 4.21 has been removed. Item number 4.22, policy number 5410, student progression. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Okay. Item number 4.23, policy number 5420, reporting student progress. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Roberts?
So, back in the old days, in elementary school, when we first accepted standard-based report cards, parents of elementary school students were able to go online and look at the individual standards and see where their child was in each individual standard. So let's say I'm in fourth grade. I could see the fourth grade ELA standards. I wasn't particularly a fan of standard-based reports cards, but it either told me I'm on track, I've already mastered it, or I'm behind and I stand to not master it, which gave parents an opportunity to see that, oh, my kid isn't on track for anything. And I could see it on an ongoing basis that, oh, this is like a problem, I need to do something. So interim report cards came out a couple weeks ago, and in my neighborhood, there were parents that were saying, of elementary school kids, that were saying they have nothing. They're halfway into the first semester. They don't have any information on where their kid is. They don't know, and one of them showed me. I had to go into somebody's house, it was clean, and they showed me on their computer, here's what it looks like, et cetera, and they went into their child, and they said, here's my kid, and I have nothing. Here's my high schooler. I can see where my high schooler is. Here's my high schooler's work. I can see they've turned in these pages. I see they didn't turn in this, they did turn in that, et cetera. I talked to Mr. Laws about it. Mr. Laws said, yeah, we're gonna have to do something about that. I believe I talked to somebody, I don't remember who it was, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure we really want to continue with standard-based report cards. But I'm concerned that if we have elementary, as we're trying to reach a higher standard and get to a higher level of proficiency and higher rigor, et cetera, that if we have parents that don't have that information, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, because especially the people up in North River Shores that are very keen on hiring tutors and hiring people to come help them and getting all this additional help, they don't even know whether they need help or not. I mean, in some cases, I can look at their kid and tell that their kid needs help, even not being particularly an educator, but I don't say anything about that. I just kind of let that go. So I didn't know, as we're doing this, reporting student progress and we're doing that, I mean, I think that's something we really need to figure out how we're doing, and I think we need to figure that out sooner rather than later. I don't know how long it's been like that. I admit that I didn't check last year to see whether any of the standards were being reported that way. Maybe it's been a few years that we've been doing that, but I mean, I think that's a problem if we're doing it that way.
So I guess I'm seeking clarification because it's 3 years now for me in the district. When I first arrived as executive director, we were on a standards-based report card, and I guess I would look to Dr. Miller. How long have we been, how long have we been on a standards-based report card in Martin County?
In elementary school, we've used a standards-based report card at over a decade, I would say is a pretty good estimate.
So my point of clarification, just so that I'm right, so I could direct staff, is it your concern that because we're on a standards-based report card, when elementary parents are logging into their interim report card, they're not seeing the status of grades on those things?
Mr. Maine, they're not seeing anything.
That's,
like zip nada.
okay.
Like you have elementary school kids, so go home and log into their thing, and maybe it's an anomaly for kids that are up in North County, but when this parent that showed it to me, there was nothing. There was the name of the kid, the name of their teacher, et cetera, but there was nothing. You had no indication whatsoever of whether their kid was brilliant, on target, or had a deficit. And I think that's something that,
I will check tonight when I get home, my 3 kiddos.
all right, thank you. But other than that, I have nothing on this. Thank you.
Bridget, did you have anything? Item number 4.24, policy number 5460, graduation requirements. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Item number 4.25, policy number 5463, credits from other schools. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations for this one? Item number 4.26, policy number 5465, general education development, GED tests. Is the board okay with accepting the Neola recommendations? Well, that concludes our policies for this evening. Just a reminder that everyone will see these policies a couple more times as we bring them back to board meetings for approval. We will now have open to the board. Ms. Roberts, do you have anything? Ms. Pritchett?
No.
Mr. Maine? Okay. With no further business, this workshop is now adjourned.